Morbidly Beautiful Radio. We bleed horror.
Did you hear the word about the man who can't be destroyed? He was buried alive.
What more can you do to a human being? This is inhuman. He's got to be crushed just under the weight of that much dirt.
He was set on fire.
What the hell is going on? Come on! The cat's on fire!
They carried him away. But he keeps coming back. Don't be afraid. Be terrified. As I lay me down to sleep, I pray my soul is mine to keep. My soul can never step outside this bed, never into all the evil. Now back from the dead.
Are you scared?
Be here.
And welcome to another episode of the Calling Hours Horror Podcast on Morbidly Beautiful Radio, which is also nationally and internationally syndicated on Mile High Radio Friday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And now, your host, the head undertaker, the dead man Michael Jones of MorbidlyBeautiful.com, Coughing Cuties Magazine, and Digital Dead Magazine.
And thank you once again to Dead Girl 13 for such a rousing announcement of the dead man entering the funeral parlor. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, your head undertaker, the dead man Michael Jones, welcoming you to another episode of the Calling Hours Horror Podcast on Morbidly Beautiful Radio. And tonight we're going to be talking about another topic that always seems to get my goat. And tonight's topic will be the MPAA rating system and how PG and PG-13 rated horror films affect the industry. Seeing as how many genre films are being released to theaters with those particular ratings and then later being released to home markets as unrated and extended cuts, the question begs as to why we allow this. Are horror fans unfairly targeted, or horror films unfairly targeted, and then double dipped by studios to increase their own profits? Is the rating system skewed so that certain films, producers, and directors are given more leeway simply because they are more quote-unquote artistic? On to discuss this topic with me this evening is filmmaker Michael S. Rodriguez, special effects artist Bill Mulligan, who worked with me on a couple of films, including The Forever Dead and The Evil Woods, and fellow Morbidly Beautiful staff writer Jamie Marino, aka Argle and Dark Scares. Make sure to be listening in at about 8:30 this evening when we go into that dicey subject. In our Digital Dismemberment Spotlights this evening, we will be covering Scream Factory's Blu-ray releases of Day of the Dead, as well as their Blu-ray release of The Legend of Hell House. We will also be highlighting three bands in our Metal Massacre Spotlights this evening. So let's get to our first one. The name of the band is Mammoth Grinder. The CD is a split between them and Hatred Surge, and the song is Pulverizer. And welcome back. You just heard the band Mammoth Grinder. The CD was a split between them and Hatred Surge, and the song was Pulverizer. Formed in 2006 in Austin, Texas, and consisting of current and former members of Power Trip, Iron Reagan, and Darkest Hour, Mammoth Grinder plays a primitive brand of punk-inflicted death metal. The band has released 3 blistering full-length and numerous splits and EPs since forming over a decade ago. After a brief hiatus in 2014, Mammoth Grinder returned and signed to Relapse Records to wreak havoc once again on the underground. Now, in 2018, Mammoth Grinder returns after 5 long years with their 4th full-length Cosmic Crypt, a non-stop meteoric force of aggression and mayhem. Recorded by Chris Pierce and the band at Tracks East in South Rivers, New Jersey, mixed by Arthur Risk, and mastered by Toxic Holocaust's Joel Grind, frontman Chris Olsch recruited Mark Brozino and Ryan Parrish to take Mammoth Grinder to new heights of misanthropic rage and blazing songcraft. Features stunning cover art from the legendary Joe Pedagano. Make sure to head on over to www.facebook.com/mammothgrinder to find out where this band will be touring, how to pick up their CDs and their merchandise, and much, much more. Don't forget that in just a few moments at 8:30 this evening, we will have our feature interview where we will be talking about the MPAA rating system and how PG and PG-13 rated horror films affect the industry with filmmaker Michael S. Rodriguez, effects artist Bill Mulligan, and fellow Morbidly Beautiful staff writer Jamie Marino. But before that, it's time for some digital dismemberment. And in our first digital dismemberment spotlight this evening, we are covering Scream Factory's collector's edition Blu-ray and DVD release of Day of the Dead. Directed by George A. Romero and produced by David Ball, Salah M. Hassanin, Ed LeMay, and Richard P. Rubenstein, special effects were handled by Tom Savini, Mark Mann, Greg Nicotero, and Stephen Kershoff. The cast includes Laurie Cardell, Terry Alexander, Joseph Pilato, Jarlath Conroy, Anthony DeLeo Jr., Richard Liberty, Sherman Howard, Gary Howard Clark, Ralph Marrero, John Amplis, Philip G. Kellums, and Greg Nicotero. It was released by Scream Factory back in 2013. Now, the premise of the film is in this, the 3rd film in the continuing saga of the undead from writer-director George A. Romero. A small group of scientists and soldiers have taken refuge in an underground missile silo where they struggle to control the flesh-eating horror that walks the earth above. But will the final battle for the future of the human race be fought among the living, or have they forever unleashed the hunger of the dead? Laurie Cardell, Joe Pilato, and Richard Liberty star in this controversial classic with groundbreaking gore effects by Tom Savini. And from here on out, of course, yes, there will be spoilers. This is the final film of Romero's original Dead trilogy, and it has been a film that has only recently begun to take its place in history with genre fans. The lowest grossing film of the original series, Romero's original script was estimated at $7 million, but only if it was an R-rated film. He decided to go with an unrated version of the film with a $3.5 million budget. Many changes were made to the script, and several scenes and character developments changed from his original vision considerably. In fact, the characters of Sarah, John, McDermott, Miguel, Dr. Logan, Bub, and Rhodes were the only original characters that made it from Romero's original script. Tom Savini's makeup work is at its peak, and we can also see a young Greg Nicotero getting his chops. Romero does a fantastic job showing the isolation the scientists and soldiers share in the mines, and the impending madness and desperation that is starting to affect everyone. The acting, locations, Music and overall sense of doom that hangs over the film lends well to its credibility and makes this film a true classic. While I would have loved to have seen George realize his dream with a $7 million budget, this incarnation of the film is a fine way to give the dead their day. A little bit more on the film. The film opens up with Sarah looking up at the wall to the calendar, and she walks over to it. As she stares at the picture and gently puts her hand upon it, dozens of undead hands rip through the wall at her. She then snaps awake as the helicopter she's in lands to search for survivors. She and Miguel walk out onto the street with a bullhorn, calling out for any survivors while John and McDermott call out over the radio. In the utter desolation of the city, their voices begin to draw the dead out from everywhere towards their location. In frustration, they head back to the helicopter and head back towards base. Upon landing in a gated area surrounded by zombies, they head underground where they run into Steele and Rickles, who demand that Miguel comes with them to round up fresh specimens for Dr. Frankenstein. Sarah, seeing that he is in no shape, tries to take over, but Miguel shrugs her off and in the process almost gets Rickles killed by a zombie. After a small scuffle, we see the two zombies dropped off in a lab environment chained to a wall. Sarah and Miguel are seen arguing, and he slaps her twice before she sedates him. She leaves him in the room alone and heads to a meeting with Rhodes, and they argue over lab conditions and Miguel's physical and mental condition. Now, from there, Fisher and Sarah head out to Dr. Logan's lab, and he gleefully shows them several different experiments he is working on for teaching the zombies. They argue different theories for a few moments, and at the meeting they discuss the radio transmissions and various things going on until Sarah tries to leave. Rhodes threatens to have her shot if she does not sit down, and after a few tense moments, she does. Rhodes lays down how things are going to run from here on out and continues to rant until Logan shows up. After berating Logan for a moment, the doctor turns it around on him, and Logan convinces him to give them a little bit more time. A bit later, Sarah and Miguel fight again, and she kicks him out. After going to get some aspirin, she walks through a fight involving several of the soldiers, but is saved by McDermott. She goes and hangs out with him and John back at their camp. They discuss different philosophies and drink for a while until Sarah passes out. The next day, she walks into the lab and sees Fisher trying to work with an unresponsive zombie. Logan comes in and starts talking about rewarding them, and he takes them to see Bub, the zombie he is working with. He shows them that Bub retains some knowledge of his past life by using a razor, a toothbrush, and a book. Rhodes comes in and is appalled by what Logan has done with Bub. As Bub speaks some words, salutes Rhodes, and then points an empty gun at him, Rhodes goes to shoot him until Logan steps in between them. A meeting is called, and Rhodes wants everything killed while Logan argues for more research. More specimens are gathered, and one breaks loose from Miguel, biting another soldier. That soldier accidentally shoots another, and Miguel is bitten in the process. He runs off in the darkness with Sarah in pursuit, and they arrive outside of John's, and she amputates his arm as Rhodes and his men show up to kill them all. They all pull guns on one another, but cooler heads prevail, and Rhodes agrees to let them keep him there. They leave, and later McDermott and Sarah go for medical supplies. After hearing some of Logan's notes on tape, they duck Rhodes' men and watch Logan and Bub interact. Rhodes walks in and finds Logan feeding Bub remains from dead soldiers and kills him. Rhodes loses it and threatens to kill everyone if John does not agree to fly him to safety. Miguel escapes and lets the zombies into the complex before he is devoured himself. Will Sarah and her friends escape the wrath of Rhodes and his men while trying to escape the zombies? Will Rhodes prevail and kill everyone, or will the zombies have their day? You're going to have to watch to find out. Bonus features included an audio commentary with writer-director George A. Romero, special effects artist Tom Savini, production designer Cletus Anderson, and actress Laurie Cadill. There's a second audio commentary with filmmaker Roger Avery. There are several featurettes on here, including World's End, The Legacy of Day of the Dead. It runs 1 hour and 25 minutes. This is a new documentary with members of the cast and crew discussing one another and the making of the film. A wealth of information and insight is included in the discussions and would be worth the price of the disc itself. There's behind the scenes footage, which is a runtime of 31 minutes. It's a behind the scenes look at the makeup in the film, courtesy of Tom Savini's personal archives. There's also a Wampum Mine promotional video, which runs 8 minutes, and that's an old promotional video for the Wampum Mines where the film was shot. There was also one entitled Underground, a look into the Day of the Dead mines, which runs 8 minutes. This was done by Cult Magazine, and it takes a look at the current day mines that were used in the film. This also includes theatrical trailers, TV spots, a still gallery. This is a 1-disc set in an NTSC format, color, rated R. The aspect ratio is a 1080p high definition widescreen 235:1. And as I continuously heap praise on Scream Factory, again, it's another genre classic bought to Blu-ray DVD with Romero's Day of the Dead. With the previous edition being released on Blu-ray back by Anchor Bay back in 2007, the question on everybody's mind is, would this be worth picking up? The answer, in my opinion, is yes. The wealth of special features alone make this edition the one to own. The brand new documentary, World's End, The Legacy of Day of the Dead, is a wealth of information and does not skimp on the detail. It was also nice to have the inclusion of Savini's makeup footage, and the Wampum Mines video was a nice historical footnote that tied in well with the Underground, a look into the Day of the Dead mines feature. The inclusion of several trailers and TV spots brings about a nice feeling of nostalgia as well. If there is any complaint about the disc, it is that, to some, the transfer may look a little too clean. While it is a minor complaint at best, this release is the perfect example of why Scream and Shout Factory is the standard bearer for Blu-ray horror releases. I give the overall movie rating a 4.5 out of 5. I give the Blu-ray a 10 out of 10. This is absolutely a must-own for any zombie movie fan or George Romero fan. Make sure to head on over to ScreamFactory.com to pick up your copy of the Blu-ray Collector's Edition of George A. Romero's Day of the Dead. Now don't forget that in just a few moments we are going to have our feature interview about the MPAA, the rating system, and whether the PG and PG-13 ratings help or hurt the horror genre. And again, we're going to have fellow Morbidly Beautiful writer Argolin Dark Scares, aka Jamie Marino, on. We are going to have filmmaker Michael S. Rodriguez talking about that, and we will also have my fellow effects partner Bill Mulligan on to discuss all of that. But before we get into all of that, we're going to go into our second Metal Massacre Spotlight for the evening. The name of the band is Cataclysm. The CD is Of Ghosts and Gods, and the song is The Black Sheep. And welcome back. You just heard the band Cataclysm. The CD was of Ghosts and Gods, and the song was The Black Sheep. Cataclysm is a Canadian death metal band. They call their music style Northern Hyperblast after an advertisement in Meat magazine describing another band, Fear Factory, as Hyperblast. The term refers to extremely fast blast beats that Cataclysm's former drummer, Max Duhamel, fused into the music. If you want to find out more about Cataclysm, where they're touring, and how to pick up their CDs and merchandise, make sure to head on over to www.facebook.com/Cataclysm. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our feature interview.
And you will face the sea of darkness, and all therein that may be explored.
And in our feature interview this evening, I think we're going to have a very interesting discussion. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the MPAA and the rating system, in particular, how it pertains to horror films with a PG or a PG-13 rating. Joining me this evening is filmmaker Michael S. Rodriguez. You should know Michael from such films as Lamb Feed, Night of the Sea Monkey, A Disturbing Tale, and Last American Horror Show. We're also being joined by one of my fellow effects artists by the name of Bill Mulligan. Bill and I worked together on my first film, which was The Forever Dead. We also worked on Aaron Harvey's Lionsgate release of The Evil Woods. And finally this evening, we're also being joined by fellow Morbidly Beautiful writer Jamie Marino. You may remember Jamie, of course, a.k.a. as Argyle and Dark Scares back in the day. Yep. He's now claiming his name, so everyone better watch out. Gentlemen, how are we doing this evening?
Great. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you know it. Yeah. You know it. And I have to give credit where credit's due. Jamie had contacted me about doing this topic. And Jamie, if you want to kind of fill the listeners and the panel in on why we came to a decision to do this topic.
Okay, I don't want to get carried away because I get really upset about this crap. But last week I saw a trailer on TV, and it was a bunch of kids sitting around playing the Truth or Dare game, but it was dark, and you kind of knew. You got the horror feeling. Oh, this is creepy. What is this? And then the one kid says, "I brought you all here because of the curse of the Wingy Glong, and we all have to play Truth or Dare and kill each other." And there's lots of screaming, and there's like a quick shot of somebody getting their throat cut. There's a guy who shoves a pen or a pencil into his eye, and then shoves his face into the wall to get it all the way through. And then there's the big scene at the end where the girl's like, you have to bash my hand in with a hammer. You have to do it. It's part of you have to do it. We're all gonna die if you don't do it. And I'm like, wow, this is exciting. What the fuck is this? And then they go to the screen, the title screen, Blumhouse's Truth or Dare. Now, that alone is a iffy topic for discussion, but it's PG-13. I exploded. I was so mad. I said, but how the fuck could you have the movie I just saw the trailer for? How could that movie that looks so brutal and so intense possibly be rated PG-13 unless it was made to be PG-13 and is soft as a kitten, or it was made as an R or was just given an R, and Blumhouse said, we want a PG-13, we want more dough, so you got to cut stuff out of it. And I don't know, that just really annoyed me, and I messaged Michael about it, and I said, this really pisses me off. Did you see this trailer? What the fuck is with this trailer? And that's where I'm at.
No,
you know what? I'm in the same boat with you, and I see it the same way. It does bother me because then I wonder, like you said, well, where are their morals at? Because it's like, oh, do we bend the rules for this movie because we want more cash, we want more asses and seats, or do we, trim it and just make it nice and soft and just let it fly through so we can get some quick dough. That to me that bothers me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important the distinction you made between the two. A movie that's PG-13 because it doesn't need to be R. I'm just as offended by a movie where they have a gratuitous and completely out of the blue sex scene or one extreme gore shot just enough to get the R rating, and that really has, the rest of the movie doesn't do anything like that. It's like, well, that wasn't necessary, but I guess you wanted to get your R-rated bona fides. A movie that's PG-13 because that's all the story needs to have is fine by me. A movie that's R, that's PG-13 because they cut all the gore out with the full intention of putting it back in for the DVD release. Oh, here's the real version that you didn't get to see in the movie theater. Yeah, that's crap. But let's face it, most of my favorite movies, most of our favorite horror movies, earlier ones, older ones, sure, would be PG-13, maybe just PG. Most all the Hammer movies at the time, of course, they were considered gratuitous violence and shocking. And you watch them now and you're like, well, they're great movies. I love them to death, but they're pretty tame. There are a few towards the end that kind of ventured into serious R territory. But
just like we go back to the granddaddy of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which you really don't see anybody getting chainsawed.
No,
but
I thought about that. I think really, if life were fair, if that movie came out now and they rated it, I don't see how it would get an R. I do see how it would, because even though it doesn't show anything, goddamn, you feel like it does. You feel like when that girl gets stuck on the hook, you do not see a single damn thing, but you feel it because it's well done. It's made really well. But in all honesty, that could easily get a PG-13. It's got less gore than Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Okay.
Well, all of these titles are going to come into play, and I'm just going to give the listeners a really, really quick history lesson here, so they get where we're coming from. Now, back in the day, Hollywood had its rating system. It was called the Hays Code, and that was in place till about 1966, and it started in 1930. So they wanted to change the way that films were rated. So basically in 1968, the rating system changed to G, which we still have. The next rating was M, which was suggested for mature audience, and that was for parental discretion advised. And then you had R, no one under 16, X, no one under 16. It changed in the 70s, G, GP, R, X, it upped the age limit by a year.
Yeah.
1972 through 1984 is when we saw PG come in. PG, parents' guidance suggested some material may not be suitable for pre-teenagers.
So PG was basically just GP and they reversed the letters.
Correct.
Yeah. Different.
So here we go. We get to the 1980s. And there were two films in particular that brought on the PG-13 rating. Those two films were Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Gremlins.
And Poltergeist.
Well,
I thought Poltergeist too.
Right, but Indiana Jones and Gremlins were the two films that were the catalyst.
Were they really going to give Gremlins an R?
I think there might have been talk about it, because if you look at the original Gremlins, it was definitely more scary than people let on.
Oh, yeah. It's a great movie, but yeah. And
so what had happened was, on July 1st of 1984, the PG-13 rating was enacted. And it was with the advisory that parents are strongly cautioned to give special guidance for attendance of children under 13. Some material may be inappropriate for young children.
But now you can still, if you're, say, a 12-year-old, can you still go see a PG-13 movie unattended?
Yeah, movie theater will sell a ticket to anybody these days.
Oh, yeah. You can probably go see Last Tango in Paris unattended now, because nobody cares as long as you got enough cash. But
now, just as an interesting side note, the first film to be released with the PG-13 rating was 1984's Red Dawn.
Oh, Red Dawn? Okay, cool.
Red Dawn was the first film officially to receive that. So that's pretty much where it stood. The X rating was still there. Now, in 1990, the only thing that they changed was they changed X to NC-17. So that's where we are with that. Now, the interesting thing with PG when it comes to the rating is films that have depictions of violence are generally restricted to PG and above. The violence in a PG-rated film will not be intense, while violence that is both intense and persistent will generally require at least an R rating. So keep that in mind when we're talking about this.
And that's why Texas Chainsaw would get an R rating, even though there's very, very little blood and no real gore. It's intense.
Correct.
It's one of the more intense movies ever made. The fact that the violence is not gory and in your face doesn't take away from the fact that,
Now, here's another interesting aspect. And keep in mind, I'm all this information I'm giving you comes from the MPAA's website, so I'm taking it straight from the horse's mouth here. More than brief nudity will require at least a PG-13 rating. But such nudity in a PG-13 rated motion picture generally will not be sexually oriented.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say there's a difference there, because nudity means there is a naked person here, and sexuality means there may be nudity in the scene, but it is of a sexual nature.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting, and, we bring up Gremlins and Indiana Jones, because I used that as an argument with someone online, and they were, we were talking about, ripping out hearts and violence and stuff, and how certain films got PG-13, and I brought up Indiana Jones, and I said, well, you had a heart rip in that, and I said, that got a PG-13 rating, and you bring up Gremlins and stuff, and my whole point with it is they were like, well, those aren't really violent films, it was just an instance of someone getting a heart ripped out, and I'm like, stop and think about what you just said. You're talking about a PG-13 rated movie, and a heart gets ripped out, and they're like, well, it's in Ready Player One, and it was in this and all that, and Poltergeist was brought up too. And when you think about intensity of horror films, how did it only get a PG? And then the answer came to me. What do Gremlins, Indiana Jones, Poltergeist, and Ready Player One all have in common?
Spielberg.
Exactly.
Spielberg. Yep.
And the same would have been true if it was, these were not some guy making a movie down in Texas with, lunch money. These were recognized filmmakers, popular filmmakers, movers and shakers, people even the ratings board doesn't want to piss off. This is not Don Coscarelli, who's got no clout with them, at least at that point in his career, begging them for an R rating and then saying, nope, too much blood, There's too much blood coming out of those silver balls. We can't make any sense of it. I do love the story I've heard about, by the way, from Phantasm, is that the way he got out of trouble was not by cutting back the blood, but by giving more blood. that they, the scene where the ball sinks into the guy's head, drills in and starts spurting out blood, he just kept it going to the point where the audience goes from being grossed out and creeped out to laughing.
Right.
It almost ventures into Monty Python Black Knight territory. Oh, there's a movie where a guy's getting his arms and legs hacked off, but it's fun. It's a joke. It's funny. It's so over the top. I guess, the argument for Indiana Jones is that that's also, it's a cartoon kind of violence where, hearts are getting ripped out, but it's so pulpy.
Well, but I mean,
literally pulpy, but kind of thing. It is a kind of a tricky thing. It doesn't feel like an R-rated movie, even with all that. There is a weird tone. I kind of like PG-13 because without it, a lot of these movies would have been. They couldn't have called them PG, so they would have given them an R rating, and then the filmmakers would have just diced stuff out of it. They would have cut the films down. So by getting the PG-13 rating, we really got a film that was closer to the artistic vision than we would have had otherwise. The problem now, of course, is that if they're going for PG-13 and taking a film that really needs to be harder than that, then, we're losing that artistic vision.
And, and that's an interesting point. Now, Michael, I wanted to ask you, especially as a filmmaker, a director, and of course Bill falls into this category too, but we're going to start with you on this one. You mentioned about how the movie is made, if it was made a certain way, if it was made to be bloody, was it cut back to get a PG-13 rating? Because what's going to happen. When that movie hits Blu-ray, the unrated collector's edition is going to come out with all the gore and all the violence in it that was missing from the theatrical cut. Is there... As a filmmaker, how much does that frustrate you? Because I'm one of those people that believes that you don't dumb down or edit a movie just so you can get the teeny boppers in there to watch it. That's why a lot of adults don't go to the theater anymore. Mm-hmm. What's wrong with R-rated horror for adults?
I'm glad you bring this up. It is a heated subject because I've gone through this more than once where even from the beginning of a script that I've written and I've sent it to a studio to kind of want to produce to somebody, and they're like, wow, look, you got this sea creature impregnating this teenager, and you got this husband doing cocaine, and we don't know about this. What demographic are you trying to look for when you're making this movie? And I said, I'm an artist first. I'm not looking at the bank right now. I have money to make this. I have the funding. Let's just make it, and go from there. But me as an artist, I don't like the fact that they'll put out an edited version. The studios will cut it up, or whoever's putting it out there, and then you get the unrated on DVD. It just feels like they're double lining their pockets there. When the artist, the director, wants to give you everything that is artistic vision. They tell a story from A to Z. And when someone says, oh, well, we want to trim about 5 to 10 minutes off of that, I've walked away from deals because of that. I've walked away from contracts because they're like, oh, this is great, but we're going to trim this and we're going to take this off of here. And we think that, it's not appropriate. And I've walked away because I'd rather just have everything there intact, everything that I meant to show you and tell you. Mm-hmm. That's what I want you to see.
Good for you, man. Good for you.
Yeah, and whether it's an R or whether it's a PG-13, it's basically like what you guys said earlier is the way the story is told. If it's told well, then we really don't have to push for that R. And some things people do, they do it gratuitously to get the R, like you said. It's almost like street cred, I guess. But
yeah.
I have a good story. We were doing when I did Lamb Feed. The movie's about cannibalism. It's about eating body parts and all this other stuff. So, we had this one girl that was kind of this temptress, and she was alluring this guy in, and giving him this drink that was drugged. And in the script, I wrote that they have this intense makeout session, and we did this kind of like 360 move, kind of like a Brian De Palma film. And we put them on a giant lazy Susan, and we rotated the camera around them as they're making up. But in the script, it called for him to reach into her blouse and rip it open and expose her breasts, and and they're making out hot and heavy, and then he finally just succumbs to the drug. But when we were doing this scene and everything was working the atmosphere, I just thought it would just be too gratuitous, so it was like an artistic decision to leave out the nudity, and to me, I didn't feel like I was holding back. I didn't feel like I wasn't going to give it my all. I just felt that artistically, the way the painting is being painted at the moment, it didn't need it. You know what I mean?
But see, I'm okay with that because
that's being smart.
That was your decision as the director.
Right. But I never thought for a moment when we're shooting it, I'm in the heat of the moment. I never thought for a minute, well, what is the audience, Am I gonna lose an audience, or I'm gonna gain one? I didn't think about it that way. I just thought about it as like, we're in this moment, and these actors have just really given it their all, and you know what? I just told them at the last minute, I said, you know what? No, don't worry about ripping or bust. Just keep making up.
Here's the thing: you're not the audience. The audience. The problem you're going to have is with distributors, because I hear this from a lot of people. Like the distributors, like, okay, how much nudity, how much violence, how much blood, how much gore, and like, and you say, well, there's no nudity. Like, well, the audience won't go see it. I'm thinking, boy, is that horseshit. No audience ever walked out of a movie they liked, and then they're like, yeah, I really like that. Wait a minute. You know what? Now that I think about it, there were no naked breasts in that movie. I'm taking back my star credit. No one thinks that way. It's and here's the thing: as much as I don't like movies that should be R that are made PG, if you watch a lot of the crap that's on the Sci-Fi Channel, then you watch the DVD version with all the cussing and nudity intact. Look at how many times these movies, they get the nudity out of the way as fast as they can. They practically open up with a girl taking a shower, and the camera lingers on her, up, down. I got the breasts, I got the butt. Okay, and then they start telling the story, and I almost feel like, and I'm pretty sure this is exactly what's happening. The people who made the movie are like, they're making us do this. Let's get it over with so we can tell our damn story the way we want to tell it. Okay, first 5 minutes, there's some nudity. Are you happy now? Now can I tell my damn story? It's such contempt for the audience on the part of the people, not necessarily the filmmakers, but the people who are paying them. That they're forcing them to put this stuff in.
Now, Bill, that's an interesting aspect from our end, too, as effects artists that have worked together. Now, we've been really lucky on the projects that we've worked on because we haven't had to really deal with that kind of issue. Like when you and I have gotten a script and they're like, okay, we want this body eviscerated. You and I just giggle and go to work. But, kind of talk about that aspect for a second as an effects artist, to be presented with something, to put in the time and the effort to do an effect, and then have it be cut.
Yeah, well, it's no fun if it's cut. If it's brief, I grumble, but I understand. And I think, okay, so I'm in charge of a couple of film festivals, short film festivals. I urge everyone to attend. Con Carolinas, the Charlotte Geek Fest around Halloween, Mysticon. I don't have anything to do with that, but it's a great short film convention. You look at a lot of these films and stuff. When effects people make their own film, and I've tried very hard not to be this person in my own, the movies are usually, I'm not saying they're usually bad, but the problem that they consistently have is they're way too effects oriented. And I understand you spend all this time building a gelatin head, lovingly filling it with gore and blood and brains and everything else, and the scene where the mummy rips it and stuff falls out literally lasts for a second. 1 second, 24 frames. And you think, I put hours, it took, weeks were spent doing this for 1 second. But here's the thing. If people groan and go, oh my God, what did I just see? And that was it. That's all you need to do. That was a good 1 second. If it lasted for 3 or 4 seconds, it might become very apparent that it's a gelatin head.
Right.
Goofy stuff that doesn't rip. This is not what would happen if an actual mummy actually ripped open an actual human head. So don't let it linger. Let it last as long as it needs to. And if you're going to make an error, make it on the side of cutting back instead of showing too much. Smart magicians don't let the trick linger long enough for people to figure out how it was done.
Very true.
I'm glad you used that analogy, because that's what I use that as well. And I said, we're magicians. That's the magic of what we do. We put it on there just enough to get a feeling or get an emotion out of you. And that's the payoff. But I'm glad you used that analogy. That's awesome.
Now, Jamie, for us also, as journalists, talk about the frustration of that, because, when we talk to people like Stephen Biro at Unearthed Films or an independent director or things like that, and they talk about, the gore, the this, the that, and then it comes out and you're like, well, what the hell happened to all this stuff that you told me about? Talk about it from that perspective for a second.
Well, I know as far as the MPAA goes, a lot of the ratings that they give, they have to negotiate. but it's not like you have to take an entire scene of decapitation out. You know, they say, well, there's 13 seconds of this decapitation. Let us shave it down to 11 seconds, and then we'll let you have 2 more extra seconds on the shower scene, you know, later on in the movie. They actually do this.
Wow.
That's how they negotiate ratings. Steven is actually doing something that I think is really righteous. He's putting together a Serbian film. He's, I don't know if he's remastering it, but I know it's being recut to include like every piece of footage the director wanted.
Wow.
And, you know, no matter how evil and horrible certain things in a movie might be, if the director wants it there, then it should stay there. It belongs there. If you don't want it, then don't watch it or push the after skip button.
Right.
But plus, I mean, personally, I kind of enjoy gore. I kind of get a kick out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
if it's creative, yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. And it's just, there's a lot of, like you mentioned, if they linger too long on a certain effect, you'll notice that it's fake. And there's so many movies, though, especially like oldish movies, like 90s, 80s, where you can tell when an effect happens, you can tell that like a few seconds were shaved off of it.
Yeah.
Because like in the middle, like an exploding head, like you can tell. Like, I don't know. I think the Dawn of the Dead head is uncut.
I know what you're talking about. Where it's so fast, it's almost subliminal.
Yeah.
Like a Deadly Friend.
Yes.
Which also was very gratuitous. I mean, they went back and they shot the basketball through the head because I guess you realize, hey, this movie really doesn't have enough violence in it. And you can go a few ways on that. It's such an oddball element. You know, it's in this movie that otherwise is not very gory, to have a baseball or a basketball going through someone's head and it explodes like a cantaloupe. Like, wow, yeah, that was different.
It's almost like he felt like Craven felt required, like he was making not a PG movie, but like a mellow movie, and he felt required to give the horror people something juicy, so he gave them the basketball head.
Right, it just feels out of place. If you're going to have that, have more of it. These are a lot of these are tough choices, and I hate to second guess the artist, but you know, when it's clearly a case where the artist was overruled by the ratings board. Friday the 13th Part 2 is a movie that clearly this was their revenge for the offense of Friday the 13th Part 1 being so successful. They got a hold of this movie and they're like, well, by God, we are not going to have Siskel and Ebert telling us how awful we are for letting this movie go through. And the killings in that are so bloodless. That movie should have been PG-13.
Sure.
The one that Carl Buechler directed, I think it was Part 6 or Part 5.
Yeah.
He stopped short of completely disowning the movie because he says just the ratings board just destroyed my movie. It took everything out of it.
And those movies they're gore movies. Their only purpose is the kills. And I people have this moral, oh my God, you know, I'm shocked at this, and like, you know, people were cheering when these teenagers got killed. I'm like, well, hell yeah, they were cheering. They're terrible characters that are not interesting. We're not invested in them whatsoever. And frankly, at this point, the movies were getting kind of boring, except for the kills, which were creative and interesting. And you know, you kind of cheer because you're watching the payoff and all. So yes, we cheer. It's not because we're in favor of people dying or anything. We just appreciate a good, creative, I haven't seen that before, kind of kill. How will this person die? And the ultimate expression of that, movies that absolutely have got to be R-rated, or there's no reason for them to exist, would be the Final Destination movies, which are literally, how are we going to kill people in ways that you've never seen them killed before, and make you not realize what's going to happen until literally a second before it happens. You know, that's what those movies are all about. And there's nothing immoral about that. It's just, you know, kind of a joke for the audience to go see how, you know, creative kills. Death is a dick, and this is how he's going to kill this guy. Could just give him a heart attack, but that would be too simple. We're going to create this crazy mousetrap, elaborate thing that ends with a pane of glass falling 50 stories and flattening them like a pancake. Is that what a human body would really look like if that happened? I don't know, but it looked pretty darn good. The audience applauded.
Now, people, with the advent of, VOD, digital download, assholes pirating stuff, things like that, a lot of people like to say the movie industry is dying. And I'll kind of point the other way. Look at films like, not a horror film, but, let's look at the Marvel movies grossing, some of these films almost grossing $1 billion.
They are.
So I don't think cinema is dead. Look at what it did in theaters. Good.
Yeah, cinema is not dead. The movie industry is in a very precarious position. Cinema may be in better, the fact that you're talking to a couple of filmmakers, and I don't know what your situation is, but I'm lucky to get a couple of dimes to rub together for some of these things. I can actually claim to be a filmmaker with the resources that I'm able to scrape together because the technology now gives me the opportunity that people never had back in the 60s and 70s when they had to beg to get thousands of dollars just for the film stock, much less everything else. Well, this is awesome. Everyone can make movies. Making money doing that has gotten pretty hard. Frankly, it was never easy. Even those guys who, those men and women who made movies back in the 60s and 70s, most of them were ripped off left and right, never made very much on it. So that's the thing. For the movie studios, if it weren't for comic book movies, they'd be dead.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't know what would replace them, and I think they need to be a little bit afraid what's going to happen when this gravy train finally dries up, as I suspect one day it will. I love them. I love them to death, but I can't see this going on forever.
Well, my question is, and Michael, I'll get you to start with this one. Why? Because we all work in the industry, I think we all feel this way. Why does it seem like the MPAA cracks down more on horror films than anything else? And an example that I'll use are films, let's say, like Passion of the Christ. Let's say films like Saving Private Ryan. There is more gratuitous gore and violence in films like that than just about, not all, but just about any horror film that gets released. Why is it in particular it's our genre that's picked on? And do you feel that the MPAA is kind of outdated now?
I think you're right on all of that. I think it's a stigma we carry around that, like you said, those movies you mentioned, yes, gratuitous gore. A lot more probably than what I have in any of my films right now. I think the state of the MPAA, I think it is outdated. I think they do need to reevaluate what is appropriate or what is, deemed rated PG-13 or R. I really do think that they have to reset everything because I think it's just we're kind of like the pit bulls of the film genres. We're this is a horror movie, so I'm sure it's going to have a lot of teenage sex and heads ripping off and everything like that. So they just put the microscope on us, and I honestly don't think that's fair at all.
Jamie?
I would love to hear some of the MPAA board meetings because they have ethics that are so strange, like The Walking Dead. Like what little gore there is left is crazy gore, like zombie gore. Mm-hmm. Now I think it'd be funny if somebody took a bunch of gore scenes from The Walking Dead, made a movie out of them, called it something else, and took it to the MPAA, and said try to get a rating for it.
Oh, you raise a great point. When you look at some of the greatest hits of Walking Dead, you're looking at stuff that is so graphically over the top. Very few movies can even compare. Hey, can I make one suggestion though? I don't agree with this, but I do think there is a logical explanation for why they're judging horror differently. The Passion of the Christ, we're seeing, Jesus flailed alive, and this is terrible. And Saving Private Ryan, we're seeing a guy walking on the beach holding his own frickin' arm, and this is war. War is terrible. All these pictures of violence are being shown as something terrible, whereas for the horror movies, we're like, hey, this guy, we just showed a guy get his head blown up by another guy with psychic powers and scanners. And it was awesome. Awesome. So I think the difference is the way they can justify it in their minds if they're harder on us is that we are showing violence to be entertaining. We are entertained by the violence.
Yeah.
And I don't have any problem with that. I think violence can be a legitimate form of entertainment when it's done artistically well. Suspiria is possibly my favorite movie.
Yes.
And it's a literal ballet of violence. It's brilliant. The violence is unbelievably brutal, but undeniably, to my mind, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And this doesn't make me a monster. I don't like to see women getting killed. But you know what? Women weren't killed in the making of Suspiria because I'm a grown-up. I'm not a 5-year-old who thinks that this is real. I'm allowed to be entertained by a really well-done movie that shows violence in an artistic way because I know no one was actually hurt by it. So, these people think we are morons. And they think they're protecting a bunch of children, by which they actually mean adults. But, they think that they're protecting us and we are, if we see too much of this, we're going to go out and do that, or it's going to make us unhealthy, or vote the wrong way, or whatever it is they think is going to happen. But that's why we're being criticized, because we are actually entertained by this, not pretending that, oh my God, this is horrible, look what they're doing to Jesus. Yeah, look at it for an hour. And, nothing got cut away. I mean, I approve of what he did. It was brilliant. But, yeah, I don't see how anyone could watch The Passion of the Christ and then criticize me for watching Suspiria.
Sure.
Man.
Well,
occasionally,
something else with
I get recognized, publicly, because I live in a small town, and sometimes, I get somebody shake my hand, hey, great job, this and that, and then sometimes I can just look, or somebody says, hey, he made that movie. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? I still go to Chuck E. Cheese with my kids. I still do things. I don't want to go and watch horror movies 24/7. I'm a regular guy, It's just that what I do. It's my job.
Yeah, and with very few exceptions, horror people are some of the kindest, gentlest people you see. I mean, horror celebrities are some of the nicest folks. No kinder man walked the earth than Peter Cushing. And that's true for a lot of you. The classic horror people are almost always recognized as some of the rare good people in Hollywood. And I think it actually takes a good person to play a really convincing evil person. They bring a certain quality to it that a really evil person might not be good at. Now, there are exceptions. There are a couple actors we could name who, turn out they were monsters in their personal lives, and they did a pretty good job of playing monsters on the screen. Obviously, we're also finding out that a lot of people who play pretty good guys on the screen are
monsters.
Yeah.
Now, two other things that are interesting with the PG-13 rating. Now, you talk about hypocrisy, and here you go. Snippets of language that go beyond, quote unquote, beyond polite conversation are permitted in
required one fuck in every PG-13 movie.
Oh, no. Check this out again, straight from them. Profanity may be used in PG-rated films, and use of one of the harsher sexually derived words as an expletive will initially incur at least a PG-13 rating. Multiple occurrences will usually incur an R rating, as will the usage of such an expletive in a sexual context. Nevertheless, the ratings board may still award a PG-13 rating passed by a 2/3 majority if they believe the language is justified by the context or by the manner in which the words are used.
Well, you know what? There was one fuck in Ready Player One. When the Chucky scene, I don't know if you guys seen that yet. Spoiler alert.
Right.
But the F word was dropped once, but it was in the context of being surprised by Chucky.
And the other one is, I find this one is funny, drug content, PG-13, okay. But this is one that I find interesting. In May 2007, the MPAA announced that depictions of cigarette smoking would be considered in a film's rating.
Yep.
Bullshit.
You know what? That pisses me off. I actually put smoking in Lamb Thief, my movie, because someone had mentioned, we just don't see any movies where our actors or leads or just smoking,
Yeah.
It's just so wrong. And I said, well, I'm putting smoking. I did the same thing with a movie I did, Homewreck, remember when they were going to pull Dukes of Hazzard off the air because of the, the flag thing? I went out and bought a flag. I said, I'm putting that in the background of my movie. I mean, because the thing is, it's just, I don't like the fact that, we'll have to reconsider because of this or that. And the smoking, I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, to me, this is trying to, I don't want to use an overused social justice warrior term, but it does seem like they're trying to advocate for a certain what's popular today. This whole thing. Listen, I have never smoked in my life other than during acting in a scene for a movie.
I remember that because
unpleasant. Yeah,
because you got the cigarette from me and almost choked to death during that scene.
I had no idea what I was doing. Yes, it was ridiculous, but it was right for the character. It was totally right for the character. And this is nonsense. This is just, craziness that, characters on stage, they have to use like electric cigarettes, and some of them are banning that. Oh my God, we're such pansies. I really thought the future
you remember a few years ago, do you remember a few years ago, or maybe more than a few years ago, but remember Nicole Kidman was doing like a press junket, I think, for the Body Snatchers movie they kind of rebooted, remember, with Daniel Craig? Yeah. And I think she got flack because she lit up at the panel when they were talking to her, and she got like serious bad press about it. And I'm like, but that's her choice. That's her, you know what I mean?
And I know she's a public eye. The classic one, of course, when they did E.T. and they somehow digitally took out guns and put in walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, this is. It just, I don't know. It just makes me think of like Soviet era propaganda where they would airbrush out people who were no longer popular with the state and put someone else in. And like, just stop. No one's going to smoke just because someone in the movie. Usually, whenever you see a character smoking, they're a bad guy. That's almost become the symbol of he's a bad guy.
That's true. That's true.
And exactly, and in my film Lamprey, the guy was a stressed out. He was a salesman that broke down, and he was stressed because he had to get somewhere, and he's going to have a couple smokes. He's going to have a couple cigarettes to get rid of the tension. So it fit the character, and I was like, yeah, I mean, he's going to smoke on there. I'm going to make it look. He's not going to blow smoke rings into the camera.
Yeah. It has done one thing. It's made older movies seem really cool now and subversive. You watch an old classic like The Thin Man, where William Powell and Myrna Loy are drinking and smoking like fishes. I mean, it's just incredible. They have a martini glass in one hand and a cigarette in the other constantly. And you're just like, wow, that's just so cool because you don't see that anymore. They're actually making cigarette smoking cool again. They need to stop this. They need to think about what they're doing. Look at it from the adolescent mind. The fact that you're telling them not to do this in such a clumsy way makes it seem kind of cool.
Now, Jamie,
they need to bring back liquor drinking priests. Priests that have a beer.
God, yeah. If my daughter is possessed by Satan, and a bunch of priests show up at the door, like, I'll save you. I'm looking for the one, the flask falls out of his pocket, breaks on the ground, and he's fumbling for a cigarette, and nicotine stains on his fingers, probably burns on his fingers because he smokes them right down in the filter. Yeah, that's the guy who's going to, have a chance against Satan.
Sure, that's the guy I would pick.
Fahey over there. He's going to end up with his neck broken, tossed out of a window.
Now, Jamie, for us, as we cover film on Morbidly Beautiful and all the things that we do, kind of talk about, because I think we see it more, and of course I know Michael and Bill because they work in film, but we're seeing so much more from the independent circuit to where films can be bypassed in ratings. And what's interesting is, on a side note to that, most people don't realize you don't have to submit your film to the MPAA. But a movie theater will not run your film if you don't.
Yeah, but here's the news. They're not going to run your film anyway.
I think it depends. But see, I think that's an unfair standard. I think it depends on the director. And why should it matter who the director is? But what I was the point of my question was, Jamie, is, for us especially, because we get sent so much stuff to watch, kind of talk about how people are missing out on so much good horror because it gets bypassed by the theater.
I feel bad because there's tons of underground movies and indie movies that, I know I can think of friends who would love it. but there's I don't have the money to buy them copies. The best I can do is send them an email saying, "Hey, you should see this. It's great." As much as I agree that the cinema is not dying, it's not. Cinema as a noun, as an all-encompassing word, is not dying. But I think that home video, Blu-ray, I almost said blueberry, Blu-ray, DVDs, I think that stuff, pay-per-view, does help movies get out there a lot more. On my cable system, MetroCast Cable, they offer new movies every Tuesday. And I religiously, every Tuesday, I check for new horror movies. Last Tuesday, Blank Face, Harvest, and what's the other one? Headless? No, not Headless. One other one. But I mean, this big corporate cable company, MetroCast, is carrying Blank Face. I think that's kind of cool. It's kind of a head scratcher because, wow, I mean, what is someone going to think who, sees it? But I think that's kind of cool. And I think the home viewing market is kind of opening a lot of doors, or should I say keeping them open, because it opened the doors a while ago. And movie theaters, it's more of an experience. Now, whenever I go to a movie, I feel like I'm going to Epcot Center at Disney World,
right?
Because it's the IMAX screen. It's the 3D, and it's like the recliner chairs. It's like, wow, this is an experience. Like Pacific Rim, I love Pacific Rim because the first time I saw it, I heard a groan. The first time I saw
I was groaning in agreement how much I love that movie.
Okay. The first time I saw it was in an IMAX screen. Just best possible sound, best possible way you could see a movie. And it was so breathtaking. I was just in awe.
Right.
And I still watch it now. I have DVD. I still watch it now. I mean, obviously it's down to a smaller scale. It doesn't have the same effect. But I just have the memories.
Sure.
Of that first time.
Do you guys think as a whole that part of the problem is movie theaters don't enforce their own rating systems? Nothing gets said until a parent complains that a movie theater sold an underage kid a ticket, but when that happens, the blame doesn't fall on the movie theater, the blame falls on the movie.
But does that happen a lot now? I mean, I'm kind of amazed that parents can be very upset about what their kids saw in the movie theater when, again, any episode of CSI, Walking Dead, or God forbid they watch Hannibal, which had some stuff that I'm still traumatized by. I mean, just amazing imagery. And you're just like, did I just watch a man crawl out of a horse carcass? Did I see that?
Right.
Rewind it? Yeah, I did. I need help. This is stuff that was unthinkable. This is on TV. These kids are seeing this all the time. They can go on YouTube and watch actual people being decapitated. What are they going to see at the movie theater? Oh, they got let into an R-rated movie. Oh, gee. What's going to happen to it? Are people still upset about that? I'm kind of amazed if it happens.
I mean, it definitely still happens. I mean, I can give you an example. Bill, you remember back when I was working at Musicland Sam Goody, when Eminem first came out as a rapper, CD was, had the explicit advisory warning and all that.
Right.
And a kid came in under 18 or under 16, actually, and wanted to buy it. Here's what was even crazier. The kid had a coupon from Fruity Pebbles to get $5 off of the CD.
Oh, wow.
Corporate would tell us you do not sell those things to underage people unless their parents give permission. But that same policy got overturned when customers were complaining that we would not accept the sales to underage people. And then we got told you sell it to them anyway. Did it, had a parent complain and call corporate, then got my ass chewed out because I sold it to a person who was underage.
Yeah. Damned if you do, damned if you can't. Obviously, the most damaging thing to that kid is the fact that he's putting Fruity Pebbles into his body.
True. But Fruity Pebbles are good. But but you know, it's just stunning to me, and it's like, what really, I mean, in each of your opinions, and Mike, let's start with you again. You know, what do we need to do to fix this so that horror is looked at as equally as any other genre with an R rating, or, you know, we won't even get into the NC-17 shit because that's another show, and I could go on for days about that. But what do we need to do to fix this? You know, should the movie theaters be held accountable for selling tickets to underage people? I know I don't go to a lot of horror in theaters because I don't want to share a theater with a bunch of 15 and 16-year-olds. They're going to talk through it the whole time.
You know, that's a good question. I don't know. You know, should they be accountable, but will they do it? You know what I mean? I'm sure they have some kind of enforcement or rule, but they don't go by it now. You know, like I said, I could probably walk in and take my kids to go see Blockers last night instead of Ready Player One, and they wouldn't have batted an eyelash. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's the difference. You just said the key difference. You were there with your kids. I'm talking about these kids that their parents just drop them off at the theater all day.
Yeah.
And don't give a damn about what their kids see until they find out, and they're like, well, why did you let my kid in? Well, why did you let your kid in the theater unsupervised?
Right.
You know, there's got to be some kind of solution. And, you know, I mean, any of you, if you have, what do you think would be viable to fix this situation?
I'm wondering this. Go ahead, please.
I don't really know. One thing that I think will help the genre in a mainstream way is more movies like Shape of Water and more movies like It. I was so excited about It. I liked it. It was an okay movie, but it was so big. Everybody loved it. It affected people. I mean, people got really enthusiastic about it. And I thought, now this is a pretty gory, pretty intense, you know, violence towards children. I mean, Jesus, that first scene. Wow. You know, I was like, okay, people are digesting this and they're okay with it and they're enjoying it. So this is a good sign. You know, maybe there will be more movies like this.
I think you made a great point because we look at this year we had. We had 3 R-rated movies. We had The Shape of Water, critically acclaimed Best Picture.
Great film.
A monster movie got Best Picture, R-rated. We had Get Out, which was critically acclaimed, R-rating, and very popular. Did really, really well. And then we had It, not as critically acclaimed, but super popular. 3 different R-rated movies, very different from each other in terms of, you know, what they were doing, in terms of just, you know, basic
content
quality, but all of them R-rated, all of them extremely successful, all of them pretty well respected. I mean, I don't think right now in Hollywood, PG-13 horror movies are, you know, the fact that we have a few more coming out like Truth or Dare is because, you know, the pipeline takes a while to change. My guess right now is they are looking at this and saying, we need some more R-rated horror movies. Now, the danger is they won't know what that means, and they'll just take some movies that were meant to be PG-13 movies and say, put some more nudity and gore in there, and now we have an R-rated movie. Voila. That's not what those movies were. Those movies were meant to be R. They had to be R. They were designed to be R. The stuff that they were intending to show, the themes, everything about them screamed, this has to be an R rating. Get Out with a PG-13 rating would be pretty lame. It with a PG-13 movie would not have been very scary. And The Shape of Water wouldn't have existed because Guillermo del Toro would probably just thrown it in their face and done one of his other 15,000 projects. So
I remember when it was announced. I mean, besides the complaining over Pennywise, I mean, the big attitude, the big thing was about this better not be PG-13. This is our chance to see a real good version of the movie or of the book. You know, and well, for the most part, people got it. And you know, it's funny, as much as we're talking about these movies and how we're hoping that they're going to advance the genre, then we have Mother. Now, I loved Mother. I actually still want to buy it and see it a few more times to see if I can figure it out. But I don't know if you guys saw it. Mother is it sort of becomes like a really an extreme horror movie, like in the last 15, 20 minutes. And I think like a lot of people, mainstream audiences, John Q. Public, sort of went because they wanted to see the new Jennifer Lawrence movie. And, oh, she's pretty. I saw her on Steve Colbert. Oh, I'm going to go see this. And then they get hit with the last 10 minutes of Mother.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Now, that's a movie that I think would inspire a lot of people to want to repress gory horror movies.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think most people that I saw I have not seen the movie, so I'm speaking out of my butt here. Most of the people I saw who were criticizing it, it wasn't so much the extreme gore, though they did mention that, but just that the movie was confusing to them, and, you know, even if the gore had been cut out, I don't think they would have liked it. There's going to be some misfires along the way, at least with Mother, something like that, even if it doesn't work, even if people didn't like it, the filmmakers tried to do something different. It wasn't bad because it was mediocre and the same old, same old. There are going to be slip-ups along the way, but, you know, the person who falls off the mountain, at least they tried to climb it, you know? I'll respect that.
Audiences are biting themselves in the ass when they complain about things like that. Because what does everybody say? Oh, I'm sick of all these remakes. I'm sick of it. Hollywood has no original ideas anymore. Hollywood isn't creative anymore. And then Mother comes out, and people are appalled. Oh, my God, this is horrible. And then the people who put the money behind Mother, you know, the big major studios, are afraid to support the next, you know, artistic vision as far as horror goes. The next scary movie that comes along that is unique, you know, they're a little bit apprehensive. So a really great movie might just, you know, fall off the face of the earth because, you know, they remember losing millions of dollars over Mother.
I still say the biggest mistake out of last year was how in the hell was The Babysitter not in theaters, but the new Amityville movie was?
Yeah. Amityville. You know, there is a certain element of nostalgia on the part of, I don't know if it's the filmmakers or the people in charge of deciding what movies get made, that I am just baffled by. Nobody is asking for another Amityville movie. The younger generation has no idea what the Amityville horror is. And when you describe it to them, and it's like, it was a film of its time. It was you know, a phenomena of its time because people thought it was real. And that time has passed. There's no more reason to make another Amityville movie.
No, I agree. Sadly.
You know, just you hear about, oh, they're going to remake this, they're going to remake that, apparently they're going to make another Terminator movie. Yep. It's not my job to tell these people what to do with their hundreds of millions of dollars, but I just want to put out there, I think every story, every decent Terminator story has pretty much been told. I'm sure that there are some creative people that come up with a new one, but it's going to be a hard sell at this point. There's always another story that can be told, but can you sell it to the audience that, okay, yeah, there hasn't been a good Terminator since the second one, but this time we cracked the code. It's like, yeah, I've been burned 5 or 6 times now.
So, you know, at the end, you know, it's, you know, what's left for us? I mean, you know, like you brought up, you know, horror did really well at the Academy Awards this year. It did really well at the box office, you know, and it's, you know, it should be pointed out, of course, these are R-rated horror films. You know, it's okay to have PG and PG-13 rated horror. You know, I don't want people to feel like I hate all PG and PG-13 rated horror, but it's like, you know, it's like wanting to pull my teeth out or pull my hair out with some of this. And it's just like, I don't know where else to go. It's just that whole damn double standard just irks me to no end. And it's, you know, is VOD the answer? You know, direct.
I don't want to sound like I'm prejudging, but there's just, when I see a PG-13 horror movie, even if it's, you know, self-contained, like The Grudge, you know, I mean, there's really no reason for that to be anything else but PG-13. You know, same thing with the Naomi Watts ring.
Yeah.
You know, when I see things like that, I still feel kind of ripped off because I know, like, without that R, like, R is sort of like, you know, the hall pass where you can go and you can sort of do whatever you want, you know, basically within reason. And that's so freeing, I think. When you see a movie that's rated R, you kind of think, like, oh, wow, I wonder what I'm going to see. I wonder what makes this movie R. You know? And that kind of fun and adventurous feeling just isn't in PG-13. You know you're going to get the one fuck. You know.
That's an interesting point I hadn't really considered. I would argue I don't really need to see anything more in The Ring. I like The Ring a lot. I would not want them to have to put something in there just to get the R rating. But yeah, knowing that you're seeing an R-rated movie, and you're saying this just makes me think this, and that actually hadn't occurred to me. It does give you a sort of tension, like you don't know what you're going to get. I don't know how far we're getting. If you know it's a PG-13 movie, even in the scariest sequence coming out, girls crawling out of the damn TV set, there's got to be something in the back of your mind saying, well, this is going to be bad, but it can't be too bad. No. We didn't get an R. So, yeah, I guess that's an interesting thought.
Well,
that's why I got so mad about Truth or Dare, because that movie was either made soft in order to make more money, or it was made with an R, but cut back by the corporation in order to make more money. And either one of those things is just total bullshit.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, the only scene I've seen, or maybe it's in the ads, or someone's threatening to cut their tongue out or something, and that's a pretty creepy, that would make me squirm. But knowing that I'm watching a PG-13 movie, it's like, well, someone's either going to stop her or she's going to do it, but we're not going to see very much, because a tongue coming out of your mouth is pretty bloody. That would get an R for sure.
Well, we're right here at the very end. So what I would like to do here is, Michael, we'll start with you again here. If you could directly address the MPAA, if you could directly address the viewing audiences, what would you say to them or implore to them when it comes to the rating systems in films, especially horror films?
I would say, don't prejudge, what we're doing or what, because of what you think, it's a stigma that just hangs over us. I really would like them to consider the art of what they're seeing and to give a fair judgment and maybe not think about, the money or or the influences or anything like that. Just give the art a chance to speak for itself and judge clearly on that. That's what I would say.
Bill?
I would say to the MPAA, just be fair and don't give NC-17s to movies just because you don't like the subject matter and you think that the filmmakers don't have enough clout to make us think about it. Obviously, there are some films, like a Serbian film, that deserve an NC-17.
Sure.
In my opinion. As far as the other one, but as far as PG-13 and R, I have no real problem. I just think the people I would talk to is the audience, to not judge films, to, find some reviewers that you trust, whose opinions seem to match your own. And if they say this is a great horror movie, and it happens to be PG-13, trust their judgment and go see it. Don't just immediately say, well, it's not an R, therefore, it must not be any good. It may not need to be an R, See what there is, what it's got going. Jamie? But I think, for horror fans especially, it's our nature that we want to see something pretty exciting, extreme. We want to get that thrill. And after having watched so many of them, the old style, shadows and suspense and everything, as skillful as it is to be able to do that, a lot of us kind of need a little bit more. So R will always be more appealing.
Agreed. Jamie?
Yeah. I would ask them, when you rate a movie, are you doing it to protect young people, or are you doing it to explain to people the content of the movie? And I would also say maybe change. Instead of this PG-13 and R or whatever, have a number system, 1 to 10. 10 being NC-17 quality extreme behavior or whatever. And, 1 being G. And sort of, that would be a better way to sort of give people a better idea about not necessarily how much bad stuff you see in it, but how emotionally traumatizing it might be. You know?
No, I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I kind of like that scale of a 1 to 10 because, you know, for me, what I would say to them is, you know, stop rating films based on. See, that's the problem. Is a lot of people don't understand. The MPAA is a board and it's subjective. Yeah. You could have someone who's having a bad fucking day or someone who watched a horror film they didn't like. They go into these ratings boards and go, you know what? It's a horror film. I'm just going to say this, or hey, I'm just going to do that. And, you know, it's very hard for those things to get rescinded. You know, we look at a lot of films over the years that receive these ratings that wind up becoming cult classics. You know, Bill brought up Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you know, things like that. Movies that were social pariahs in their time are now, even by big name filmmakers, considered pillars of the film industry and films that got them into the genre, or, you know, into filmmaking, period. You know, be more subjective, be consistent with your ratings. Don't go, oh, well, this is a Rob Zombie film. Well, this is automatically an R, or it's automatically this, or it's automatically that. Oh, this is Steven Spielberg. Well, because it's Steven Spielberg and he rips out a heart, well, we'll give it a PG because it's Steven Spielberg. No, be consistent across the board. If you want cinema to continue, if you want good movies, if you want audiences, be fair and subjective. I know people that won't go to certain movies just because it has a certain rating. You know, and I think that's sad. So much is missed out. You know, it's, I could choke somebody. It's not a good thing to say. But, you know, I'm glad that I could have you guys on, people who are in the industry in different capacities who can speak to the passion, you know, as all of you have said. You know, the horror genre in particular, we are some of the nicest people you will ever meet. Our fans are some of the nicest people you will ever meet.
Oh, they're awesome.
You know,
definitely.
And like Bill said, you know, people forget film is an escape. It's not real life. That's why I don't lose my mind when if a kid gets killed in a horror movie or a woman falls in a wood chipper or, you know, whatever. It's not real. It's escapism. It shouldn't make a difference if it's a dude in a hockey mask or if it's Al Pacino and Joe Pesci in Goodfellas stabbing and killing a guy in a car and burying his body in the woods. There's no difference. It shouldn't make a difference if it's an A-list actor or a B-list actor.
Yeah, and look, we're not saying that everyone has to love everything. I haven't watched a Serbian film. I know enough about it to know I will not find it an enjoyable experience. I am led to believe, and from what little I've seen, it's really, really well made.
Yes.
It does what it needs to do. It's not real. I just don't think I can get any, for my own reasons, I'm not going to get any entertainment value out of it. I've gotten in trouble for recommending Cannibal Holocaust, which is an absolutely indefensible movie, and yet I insist that it is a brilliant movie, expertly made, and if you can stand the horrible aspects of it, it's almost a necessary movie for a horror fan, someone who considers himself a student of the game to watch, because it is brilliant. But if someone doesn't want to watch Cannibal Holocaust, they don't need to justify their reasons to me, because I totally get it. I get why someone doesn't want to watch that movie, and that's okay. The only difference is no one should say, well, this is not for me, and I don't want anyone else to see it either. That's where we go into a whole different problem here.
Well, definitely. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for coming on. This is definitely a topic that we can all revisit. I know we're all very passionate about it. Before we go, Jamie, start us off. Let people know where they can find you, follow you, things like that.
Well, you can find me on Facebook, Jamie Marino. I make a point to put a link to all my articles on my page, because I kind of want people to. I want this to become a career for me, and I'm at the bottom right now, and I kind of want to get some readers. So read my stuff. Go to Morbidly Beautiful. I have a lot. I looked the other day. I've got like 5 or 6 pages, and I'm like, wow. Read my stuff. Comment on it, even if it's just going to Facebook and commenting there. even giving it thumbs up to let me know you saw it.
Definitely.
You know?
Michael.
But, yeah, that's what I'd like.
Tell people where they can find your stuff, man.
Michael S. Rodriguez on Facebook, MSR Studios 1 on Instagram. I have Last American Horror Show that's coming out on DVD. It'll be Redbox and Walmart this fall. Lake of Shadows, I'll be hitting the film festivals with that. It's a full feature with an all-star cast. And, man, I'm just going to keep plugging away. Fighting a good fight.
Damn right.
Good. Cool.
Bill, tell them where they can find you.
I'm on Facebook, Bill Mulligan on Facebook. My picture is Robot Chicken, so that's easy to figure out. I'm old. I don't get Twitter. I just can't make it work. I understand it. My next movie I'm working on is Christine Parker's Blood of the Mummy, feature-length film, lots of blood and gore and gelatin heads. Con Carolina's film festival. I'm running the film track there. Lots of great panels will be there. That's sometime in June. And Gruesome Magazine. Do podcasts on the decades of horror for Gruesome Magazine.
Very nice.
Hey, this has been fun. You guys are a lot of fun to talk to.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's been great too.
And you know, Bill, I have a few things up the sleeve. I think we might have to put the band back together once or twice.
There you go,
here.
man. I've learned a few tricks since then, so I know you have too. So,
all right, gentlemen. Again, thank you for being on, and we'll have you all on again soon.
take care.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And once again, I would like to say thank you to my guests this evening for coming on and talking about the MPAA rating system and how PG and the PG-13 rated movies affect the horror genre. Again, thank you to effects artist Bill Mulligan, filmmaker Michael S. Rodriguez, and fellow Morbidly Beautiful writer Jamie Marino, a.k.a. Argyle Dark Scars. Coming up in just a few moments, we're going to go into our final Digital Dismemberment Spotlight this evening, where we will be talking about Scream Factory's Blu-ray release of The Legend of Hell House. But before that, it's time to go into our final Metal Massacre Spotlight. And it should come as no surprise. The name of the band is Cradle of Filth. The CD is Bittersweets to Succubi. And the song is Suicide and Other Comforts.
Dead overcome by woe, and you, life grows so fond of dread.
And welcome back. You just heard the band Cradle of Filth. The CD was Bittersweets to Succubi, and the song was Suicide and Other Comforts. Cradle of Filth are an English extreme metal band formed in Suffolk, England in 1991. The band's musical style evolved originally from black metal to a cleaner and more produced amalgam of gothic metal, symphonic metal, and other metal genres. To find out when and where they'll be touring, to pick up their merchandise and their CDs, make sure to head on over to www.cradleoffilth.com. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our final digital dismemberment. And in our final Digital Dismemberment Spotlight this evening, we are covering Scream Factory's Blu-ray release of The Legend of Hell House. Now, film was directed by John Hoff, produced by Albert Fennell, Norman T. Herman, James H. Nicholson, and Susan Hart. Special effects were handled by Roy Wybrow, and the cast included Pamela Franklin, Roddy McDowall, Clive Reville, Gail Honeycutt, Roland Culver, Peter Bowles, and Michael Gow. The film was released by Scream Factory, and the release date was in 2014. Now, the premise of the film is it sits here, shrouded in mist and mystery, a nesting place for living evil and terror from the dead. It's Hell House. Roddy McDowall heads the cast of this exciting chiller about 4 psychic investigators and the dark brooding mansion they call the Mount Everest of haunted houses. It's already destroyed one team of researchers. Now this brave quartet ventures in for another try at unraveling its secrets. But before they succeed, they must suffer through madness, murder, and everything else that the spirits who dwell here have in store for them. Yet learning the truth just might drive them all insane. An ingeniously devised ghost story, The Legend of Hell House will thrill and delight veteran horror fans from the first creaking door to the very last slithering shadow. And from here on out, of course, there will be spoilers. John Hoff's The Legend of Hell House is a perfect vision of what proper atmosphere, excellent writing, and a great cast can do for the paranormal genre. From the novel written by Richard Matheson and taking small plot points from loosely based stories on the life of occultist Aleister Crowley, Huff manages to craft his vision of a house beset with horrific events and evil spirits with a bloodlust equal to any other creature in the genre. The film was originally supposed to take place in New England with American investigators. Originally, Richard Burt and Elizabeth Taylor were coveted by Matheson to play the lead roles. But due to the film being made in England, the locations and nationalities of the investigators were changed. The house used in the film certainly provides a sense of foreboding danger, and the performances of the actors really help to convey the dread. Pamela Franklin is highly convincing as the wide-eyed innocent medium, while Roddy McDowall plays his character with a detachment that makes you fear what he really knows. Clive Reville and Gail Honeycutt play well off each other as well as husband and wife, with Reville's skepticism and Honeycutt's repressed sexuality ratcheting even more tension. While we never get the definitive answers to what really lies on the other side of death, the film manages to scare the hell out of you without being overly gratuitous. A must for fans of the genre and anyone who loves the supernatural, modern-day filmmakers can learn a lot from this film. Now, a little bit more about it. We start off with seeing Dr. and Mrs. Barrett in a waiting room. The good doctor is called back into a meeting and is offered a huge sum of money to go with the team to investigate Hull House, a reputed haunted house. After being told that he will be working with 2 other psychics, the young Florence Tanner and the survivor of the last quest into the house, Benjamin Franklin Fisher, and displaying his displeasure, he takes the job and relents in letting his wife come along so that he can prove his theories. Given a few scant days to make their investigation, they all meet at the foreboding house. After walking through the house and filling one another in on what details they have about the previous inhabitant, they waste no time in conducting a reading through Tanner. During the reading, she projects ectoplasm from her fingers and is in contact with a spirit that claims to be the son of the owner. Later that evening, the spirit seemingly toys with Tanner in her room, opening doors and throwing her blanket at her. The next day, she tells Dr. Barrett about the experience, and he has to do another sitting under more scientific grounds. The sitting is more powerful than before, and again later that day, the spirits visit Tanner's room. When Tanner confronts Barrett again, they argue about what happened. As Tanner gets angry, the spirit shatters a glass in Barrett's hand and various food implements are thrown at him, culminating in almost being crushed by a chandelier in the room. Barrett believes that Tanner is controlling the spirit and making it do harm to others. Later that night, Mrs. Baird is looking through some old books that relate to sexuality and other odd paranormal activities. She becomes possessed by a spirit and attempts to seduce Fisher, but he resists and slaps her out of it. Tanner explores the house and finds what she believes are the remains of the son and is physically attacked by the spirit, resulting in several bloody scratches on her body. They lay the remains to rest in a ceremony, but Tanner is still haunted in her dreams by the spirit. After she awakens, a cat enters her room and there is a horrific struggle as the cat claws her up. She manages to escape the room bloody and beaten, but alive. Later on in the evening, the spirit once again possesses Mrs. Barrett, and she tries again to seduce Fisher, but he resists. Dr. Barrett walks in and sees what is happening until she snaps out of the possession. After a discussion with Fisher, Barrett is convinced that he is holding back. In private, Fisher opens himself up to the house and screams in agony as he feels the presence in the house run through him. All the members of the group keep trying to get one another to leave the house, but no one will listen to each other. Dr. Barrett has a machine brought to the house that he believes will reverse the negative energy of the evil spirits contained in it. Fisher disagrees and tries to tell him to lie about the results of their experiments and just leave, but Barrett refuses. Tanner opens herself up to the spirit sexually so that it has the power to leave the house, but it simply abuses and possesses her again. She attempts to sabotage Dr. Barrett's machine, but fails to do significant damage and is subdued. After firing up his machine and attempting to clear the house of the negative energy, Barrett is shocked to discover that his machine did not work with the intended purpose. Will they be able to cleanse Hull House and the evil spirits and energy that plague it? Do they find the answers to what lies on the other side of death? You're going to have to watch to find out. Bonus features on this disc include audio commentary with actress Pamela Franklin. There's a featurette entitled The Story of Hell House. It's 28 minutes long. It's an interview with the director. It's a really nice and detailed interview about the story, locations, cast and crew from the film, and the possibilities of a sequel. There's also a photo gallery and radio spots. There is also available from Scream Factory. These are more trailers from other films released by Scream Factory, including The Vampire Lovers and The Amityville Horror. This is a one-disc set in NTSC format. It is a color film with a PG rating. The aspect ratio is 1080p high-definition widescreen 185:1. And again, with Scream Factory, here's a classic horror film that is more than deserving of the Blu-ray upgrade, and The Legend of Hell House is no exception. Blowing away previous editions such as 20th Century Fox 2001 Bare Bones DVD and a 3-disc quadruple feature set including The Amityville Horror from 2005, Poltergeist 2 and 3, which are also from 20th Century Fox. This release loses none of the quality as the colors remain bold and rich while maintaining the darkness needed for atmosphere, while the sound is incredibly robust for a mono soundtrack. The interview with the director contains a wealth of information and insight, and the commentary track with actress Pamela Franklin does the same. The photo gallery is a treasure trove of stills from the production, and as always, the radio spots are fascinating to listen to as you try to conjure the film in your head. The addition of other Scream Factory trailers is nice as well, and gives a glimpse of the other great films in their portfolio. Once again, this release is the perfect example of why Shout and Scream Factory is the standard bearer for Blu-ray horror releases. I give the movie a 4 out of 5. I give the disc an 8.5 out of 10. Make sure to head on over to Scream Factory to pick up your Blu-ray copy of The Legend of Hell House. And once again, I would like to say thank you to my guests this evening, filmmaker Michael S. Rodriguez, special effects artist Bill Mulligan, and of course, Morbidly Beautiful staff writer Jamie Marino, aka Argyle Dark Scares, as we talked about the MPAA rating system, particularly PG and PG-13 rated horror films and how they affect the genre. I would also like to thank the bands that we highlighted in our Metal Massacre Spotlights this evening. Those bands included Mammoth Grinder, Cataclysm, and Cradle of Filth. I would also like to thank Scream Factory for sending us our Blu-ray copies of The Legend of Hell House, and of course George A. Romero's Day of the Dead. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode, ladies and gentlemen, and do not forget that the Calling Hours Horror Podcast is also nationally and internationally syndicated on Mile High Radio on Friday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure to tune into the show then. And until next week, this is your host, the Dead Man, Michael Jones of MorbidlyBeautiful.com, Coughing Cuties Magazine, and Digital Dead Magazine, telling you all to rest in peace.